Littleton, Mass. It's the Littleton Planning Board, Thursday, March 4th, 6:30 p.m. Welcome all. We have a 6:30 presentation right off the bat. Cindy Napoli is going to do a brief presentation about affordable housing presentation and discussion. I saw Cindy in the waiting room. I'm assuming she's still there.
Yep, she's on her way. There you go.
Got her in nice and early so she doesn't have to waste the rest of her night watching us. Good evening, Cindy. How are you?
Good evening, Mark. Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
There's no place I'd rather be.
Oh, please. Thank you for taking the time to show us the presentation. You've had this for over a year, right?
This is an updated version of the housing presentation. I had done one a few years ago, but recently the Affordable Housing Trust partnered with Metro West Collaborative and retained a consultant to take all of the housing reports and data that we've compiled as a town over the years and make something of it, summarize it for us so we could put it into a report and be able to have it in a format to share with residents and other board members in the community overall.
That's great. So do you want to get started?
Yeah, we can do that.
We have like 20 people that are on tonight. So.
Oh, good. Excellent. All right, great. So, should I share my screen, Maren, or I've never done that? How should I do?
Either way is fine. I can share this one here.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. That'll be easier. All right, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so I just gave a brief introduction to the chair, Mr. Martinari. This is housing, report about housing understanding needs in 01460.
Well, maybe. There we go.
Okay, there we go. So as some of you may or may not know, my name is Cindy Napoli. I'm the chair of the Littleton Select Board. I am also the vice chair of the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust and chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. The Affordable Housing Trust has been very successful since it was created a few years ago. And one of the things that we recently did was contract with a consultant from Metro West Collaborative to compile information from various reports, as you can see in the left-hand column under sources, and put it all into one format so that we could kind of get our head around housing needs in Littleton and what really does what types of housing are we looking for and what constitutes really affordable housing for the town of Littleton. So the next slide, please, Maren. So these were just some of the findings that came from the work that was done. The median home value for the town of Littleton, as you can see, is $510,000. Median valued home for a single family or a condo is $436,000. Rent in Littleton is very, what I consider expensive. The median gross rent is about $1,300. Rents can go as high as $2,300 or even the low $3,000 level. Employer wages, this is important to note. The average employment wage for the town of Littleton is $86,840. We have 50% of our apartment units are subsidized, and 40% of all rental units in Littleton are subsidized. And we have a very low inventory of available rental units here in town. So the next slide, please, Maren. So we're going to talk about housing stock. So this slide, the graph on the right is from Mass Housing Partnership. It's an amazing tool that they offer called DataTown. It's one of my favorite resources to go to. As you can see, our housing stock in Littleton is incredibly out of balance. No surprise there. The majority of our housing are single family homes. The vacancy rate in Littleton is of our rental units is only 4%, and only 15% of our housing stock is rental units. 50% of our rental units are subsidized housing, as I mentioned. And this I found to be very interesting. Over the past 18 years, only 197 building permits were issued for multifamily units. 144 of those were for the 15 Great Road Village Green, which many of you may be familiar with on the Acton line. The rest of the permits that were issued were for single family homes. Next slide, please, Maren. So as you can see, majority of our housing stock consists of single family homes. Interestingly enough, 80% of Littleton senior citizens live in single family homes. And those homes consist of 3 and 4 bedroom units. Majority of our seniors, however, are only occupying one of those bedrooms at this stage in their lives. Next slide, please. So income versus housing, how much income is needed to live in the town of Littleton? So really what income requirements mean, so in order to live in Littleton and not be what is considered cost burden, you don't want to spend more than 30% of your income on housing costs, supplies, food, rent, all of those necessities that come with a housing unit. So 80% of AMI for your income to live in the town of Littleton. For a 1 bedroom, you would need to earn $62,475. For a 2 bedroom, around $70,263. At 60% AMI, you would need to earn, it would be an average income of about $47,400. So the next slide, please. So that's actually cutting out. So this was very interesting finding from the report. The average local wages in Littleton, as mentioned, is $86,840. The number of industries in Littleton who's in the year 2019, whose wage would allow for a household to pay the median rent without being cost burden is 7% or less. So only 7 industries in the town of Littleton would provide the wage necessary for someone to work and live in Littleton without being cost burdened. The next slide, please. And as we talked about median home sales, as you can see, sales prices for a single family home is around $445,000. Condo prices are right in par with that at $430,000. Rental housing is, again, market rate units for rent are not cheap in my mind. The low cost is around $1,600, and then for a 1 bedroom, and then around $1,800 to the low 2s for a 2 bedroom. Next slide, please. So what that means is income needed. So in order for a renter to afford a 1 bedroom home in Littleton, unit in Littleton, they would need an annual income of $64,880 or $78,280 for a 2 bedroom. To own a home and purchase a home in Littleton with a 5% down, their average median income would need to be about $116,000, and with 20% down, it would be about $94,000. Next slide, please. So as we discussed, sales price for a 1 bedroom unit at 80% AMI requires an income of about $62,000. For a 1 bedroom, at 60% AMI, the necessary income is around $47,400. And for a 2 bedroom at an 80% income, AMI requires a unit requires income around $70,263. So the next slide. So the number of senior households earning between $20,000 and $75,000 is significant. As you can see in the lower left-hand column, the yellow arrow, if you look at the number of seniors in that income range between 20,000 and as high as 59,999 is significant. So again, they would struggle to afford a market rate unit in the town of Littleton. However, they would be able to afford a unit at the 60% or the 80% AMI. And the other thing that I think is really significant as well is if you look to the right side, and if you look at the age group, in the orange, the 25 to 44 age group, the number of households in that age group and the amount of income that they earn, especially in the far left there, the number of individuals of that age group who earn less, $20,000 or less per year, is really significant. And then only a minor, a very minuscule number of residents in that age group actually earn income between 20,000 and as much as up to 59,000, or we'll just average it up to $60,000 a year. So that's something to keep in mind as we go forward. The next slide, please. And so I found this slide to be really interesting as well. So we talked about being cost burden. So what that means is a cost burden household is a household that, I'll give you the actual definition under HUD. A cost burden family are those who pay more than 30% of their income for housing and may have a difficulty affording necessities such as food, clothing, transportation, and medical care. So as you can see, look at the number of this slide, the cost burden householders in the town of Littleton. The top graph there, I think that says there's 69% of the households in Littleton age group 15 to 24 are cost burden. And then if you come down to the middle row there, again, owner occupied cost burden households by the age, again, 41% in age groups 15 to 24, and then 24% in age groups 65 plus. That's for owner occupied. For renter occupied, if you look to the right in the middle row there, 100% of renters ages 15 in the age 15 through 24 age group are cost burdened. And then if you look to the far right, 50%, 56% of renters ages 65 plus are cost burdened. So the next slide, please, Maren. So what we know from this finding is households with 3 or more bedrooms make up to 2/3 of Littleton's housing stocks, but families with children occupy fewer than half of them. Nearly 1/3 of the 3+ bedroom owner-occupied units are headed by someone 55 and older, and nearly 16% of those households are headed by somebody 70 years or older. Our housing stock is out of balance. We have a large stock of single-family homes, many of which have empty bedrooms that are not being utilized due to the age of the occupants. We have empty nesters and seniors living alone. So there's family housing that already exists in Littleton, but it's not available for at market rate for families because the seniors have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to move to downsize and simplify their housing circumstances. And so really, this is what's called the senior sell-off. It's a common term that's used for housing. And really, without the senior sell-off, our housing market's at a standstill. We keep building housing that we don't necessarily need as a community because the seniors cannot move out and downsize and free up their existing homes, which would be very suitable for a young family. And they really would like to transition into a smaller housing unit. And we just don't have that housing stock. Maren, can you go to the next slide as well? But aside from the seniors, in addition to the seniors, there's a whole nother demographic that our unbalanced housing stock is impacting. And as you can see, this is a slide I obtained from Datatown from Mass Housing Partnership. Look at the decline in the age group, ages 20 through 34 in the town of Littleton. What that slide represents is that our average in Littleton for individuals in that age bracket is below state average. And so what is happening is, as you can see, look at the 15 through 19 age group column. It's above state average, and then there's a sharp decline. We have young adults growing up in our community who are going away to college. They come home here and they don't have any housing. There's not housing available for them in our community that they can afford as young adults transitioning from college or transitioning from a trade or transitioning out of high school into the job market. And that's really something that we should be concerned about as a community, because what's happening is these young adults are now moving to other communities that are more affordable. And they're looking for the same type of housing that seniors are looking for to downsize. And those are affordable, smaller units, rental units, townhouses, condominiums, those types of housing units that we lack in the town of Littleton. Next slide, Maren. So this is just an example of someone who is priced out of the town of Littleton. This is a hypothetical scenario. This is Alice. She owns her home, but no longer needs all the bedrooms that we discussed earlier in this presentation. She'd like to move into a disability-friendly community. We don't have one here in Littleton. As you can see with her income, she can only afford $462 a month rent. That would be a subsidized rental unit. And as we saw earlier in the presentation, we do not have enough units at that level, that type of unit and that price point available in the town of Littleton. 30% of seniors live alone, and 65% of seniors living alone own their own home. We have a lot of seniors considered the low income bracket, making them eligible for affordable housing, and that would be in the 60% AMI range that we talked about earlier, or even lower than that, even as low as the 50% or the 40% AMI range. The next slide, please, Maren. This is another example of a family that can't afford to live in Littleton. This is a hypothetical family that would like to move here from the city. We have actually a lot of people trying to transition to this area, especially during the pandemic. But as you can see, with the income that both she and her husband earn, it's just not enough to afford a single family home here in the town of Littleton based on our market rate units. Out of 130 single family homes sold in Littleton in the past 12 months, only 19, less than 7%, were 2-bedroom starter homes. And the average selling price was $406,000. The next slide, please, Maren. This is another example of someone who is priced out of Littleton. This is John. He works in the retail trade. He earns $35,880 a year. He's considered 50% AMI. And you can see what he would be able to afford for rent in Littleton, $893 a month. As you saw earlier in the presentation, the average rent for a 1-bedroom in Littleton is about $1,200 to the low 2,000s per month. And the number of units available in Littleton is 0 at this price point. And there's 1,300 people who work in the town of Littleton in the retail trade. And of those people, there's over 3,000 people who work in Littleton in the trades with an average local income is less than 80% AMI. Next slide, please. And this is another example of somebody who would be priced out. Roger's recently divorced. He was living here in Littleton with his wife. This is a hypothetical scenario. And he wants to stay in Littleton. He wants to stay and be close to his family and his kids who are still in school. And he needs a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment so he can stay here in the community. He can afford about $2,274 a month in rent and utilities, and he's interested in a 3-bedroom unit. There's only a handful of 3-bedroom units available here in the town of Littleton. And the next slide, please. So in conclusion, what we learned from the analysis done on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust is that our housing stock is out of balance. We have a large stock of single-family homes currently owned by seniors, which presents an opportunity to attract young adults and families to our community. There's over 3,000 people in Littleton who work in the trades, for which the average local income is less than 80% AMI. 7 or less of the local industries provide a wage which should allow a household to pay the median rent without being cost burden. And a majority of our local wages would not permit the purchase of a median valued home or permit the purchase of a starter home in Littleton. Also based on Littleton's starting wages for employees, according to our town report, the highest starting salary for a town of Littleton employee is $54,558. So as you can see, that's another concern area that we could be concerned about, is that people who work in our community or starting out their careers in our community cannot afford to live here. And a majority of the senior households in Littleton are considered low income and eligible for housing at 80% AMI or less. And so I just wanted to remind everybody about the vision and the master plan goals. Really about creating housing for residents in the town of Littleton. We want to be a community that supports its children, its seniors, its families, and employees by encouraging a variety of housing types and employment opportunities. Creating more reasonably priced rental housing designed to attract both younger adults, small families, or older householders wishing to downsize would not only provide needed rental opportunities, but would allow seniors to downsize, thus freeing up single-family homes in our community. And the next slide, please, Maureen. And this is just a visual example of a lot of establishments that we frequent as residents in the town of Littleton, and that are just a reminder that the people who provide us services through our school department, our supermarket, our restaurants, and our administrative offices and healthcare cannot afford to live in the town of Littleton. So really, I think the Planning Board and the Affordable Housing Trust, with the assistance of our town planner, have done a great job, as well as the Select Board, in really trying to get a handle on housing needs in the town of Littleton and be proactive about trying to make changes in our community to fulfill those needs. One of the biggest projects that we have going, are presenting right now and working on, is the 40R project at Littleton Station. And there is a reason for that project, and the housing that is being proposed in that area of town, is that you may or may not realize the master plan has asked us to create housing where it makes sense, develop where it makes sense. And one of those areas was Littleton Station. So I'm personally very excited about the Littleton Station project, and I hope this presentation will help residents understand that we're not developing that area just for the sake of developing. It's really to meet a need for our community, not only for our seniors, but for our younger adults, and for our workforce, and for our employees, and for people that we rely on to provide services to our town. And one other thing I just wanted to mention really quickly is a couple of misnomers or I don't know how you want to word it, about housing in Littleton. There was some conversations on social media about concerns about overcrowding in our schools with new housing development. And I relied upon a report presented from that Mike Fontanella from the school committee had presented. And it really talked about, there was an increase, I think it was like 10.7% increase in housing stock in Littleton, only resulted in like a 3% increase in enrollment in our schools. And another concern that was raised was, will creating this amount of affordable housing impact the prices of our homes, the market rate of our existing homes here in Littleton? And there's a great report that came out on Redfin News in February, and I'd be happy to share that with anybody. They did a study of over 220,000 homes across a 13-year period, and found no consistent relationship between the addition of low-income housing and changes in nearby home prices in 18 of the 26 metro areas studied in that report, and one of those areas was the city of Boston. So I'm happy to share that report if anybody's interested in reading that. So that concludes my presentation. I hope I didn't go too fast.
It was extremely sobering and eye-opening to those of us that haven't seen it in its entirety, I'm sure. Obviously, we look forward to your input in 2 weeks when we start the process for the Foster Street 40R. Your slides and your background is going to be greatly appreciated as we work our way to getting that 40R to the townspeople for a vote at town meeting in May. So obviously, the more you can shed light on the vast discrepancy of what's available for seniors and first-time home buyers and the young people in the town of Littleton, it's going to make that project obviously more viable, and hopefully, as we've been saying from the train station advisory, we're trying to at least make a dent in the issues that are confronting housing in the town of Littleton for the past 15, 20 years. So
Right.
that would be great. I want to ask anybody on the board if they have any questions, and see if anyone in the audience has any questions. Does anyone from the board have any questions for Cindy or the presentation that she just did? Anyone?
No.
No. Anna,
Thank
do
you.
you?
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome, Anna.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Mara,
Yeah, Chuck to Coast.
Chuck, you there?
Yes, I am, Mark. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate a lot of what Cindy said and basically thank Cindy. A lot of us are putting a lot of time and effort into addressing housing needs in our community, but I don't think anybody's worked as tirelessly as Cindy has and committed a lot of time and effort and energy into compiling this information to encapsulate it so that it's much more easy for all of us to digest and to help us all educate the whole community. It is sobering, Mark, to use your word. And I think that the 40R project, along with some other things that we're talking about as far as zoning and bylaw changes and that kind of thing, we are addressing it. But I think the 40R project will really help us to get to a point that will address many of these needs as broadly and more quickly than really any other initiative we could take. But mostly I just wanted to say thank you to Cindy and to all those that have put a lot of time and effort and energy into this.
Thank you, Chuck. Mara, does anyone else have their hand up?
Yes, Mark Staples. Just a moment.
Okay, yeah, I just had a question I'm just going through this now with my in-laws. They want to stay where they are, but what they can't afford is the property taxes, right? They don't use the 4 bedrooms upstairs. They stay on 1 floor. And so is there anything looking at that kind of relief? So for those folks who do want to stay where they are and feel, my in-laws personally feel that they're being forced out and trying to be forced to, move to a smaller place. It's probably better for them, but that's how they feel about it. So in Littleton, is there any drastic, like totally zeroed out the property taxes that they pay? Because in some cases it's $10,000-$12,000 a year.
But you can get an abatement.
A
Seniors can
complete
get an
and total-
abatement in Littleton if they've been here for 5 years.
Is that 100% abatement of all property taxes for the rest of their life?
No, you got to apply for it, and there's some other programs too. I know George Sanderson champions a lot of the
Okay.
work relief programs. There's a lot of options, but you're not wrong in that seniors that stay in their homes get sort of pinched by property tax just because of appreciation.
Right. Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
There are some programs for the state, for the seniors to help work off some of the tax burden. It's not a lot, but at least it's something there. I know, Cindy, you can probably speak to it better than I can, but there are some programs that the town offers to help work off some of the taxes.
Right.
Mark, Cindy,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, John.
the only comment I would make on this, and there's a lot of debate about, we can debate all the numbers that you threw up there, but I think when it comes to like looking at the master plan and housing impacts and looking for that mix, we should be doing a cost benefit analysis on that, because the town's finances are predicated on a certain mix, right? So we run at like 38.2% children under 18 for our household mix, right? So and that's sort of, and 66% of your budget is a school budget, right? So you could say, listen, if we say we add 1,000 residents to the town and we maintain that mix ratio, then it should be incremental, right? So there's no marginal increase in your overall finances to the town. So you're not looking at it at a class. But we don't do that when we put these proposals together. So you don't really know. There's no way to reasonably predict what the outcomes are going to be if you were to say, let's say you get your density in the 40R. You don't really know what the outcomes are because you're not modeling it. You can guess. I just think you should tie the analysis a little better, because Acton moved their numbers and they pinched themselves. So they're at like 42%. It's not so much how many units you have, it's what your overall ratio is, and that drives your cost. So if you're targeting certain types of housing, then you should make sure that we're at least not going to move the number, because people don't necessarily move to Littleton because they want to live here as a single. They come here because they tend to have children and they intend to go to the school system. You come here for that. Otherwise you'd stay in Boston. So that's always been the draw for this area. So I think we just need to be a little bit more deliberate about how we measure potential outcomes.
Right. Well, the other thing too, Jerry, though, is there's a lot of young adults in Littleton who grew up here that are living with their parents. They can't afford to move out. I've got 3 living with me right now.
Yeah.
And I know all their classmates, go 3 years before them, 3 years after them are in the same boat. So there's a whole nother age group demographic that, in addition to the seniors who want to live in Littleton, that can't afford to. Aside from people wanting to move here to, start a family and whatnot, there's a lot of younger generation that want to stay here because they grew up here.
So the question then would be, and I don't disagree with you, it is definitely harder when you're starting out today than it probably has been since the Great Depression. That's a fact. But how do you do that? Is the 40R going to provide some relief in that mix?
Okay.
Are you going to get those?
Yeah.
Looks like Charlie. Sounds like Charlie. Food?
Are you actually going to get the outcome you're looking for? Like, is it going to be low-income seniors and families that end up getting those units? Are you actually going to be able to target the demographic that you're talking about, the graduates, the young kids that want to stay in town, work in town, but may not have a family yet? Are we actually providing that housing in the 40R? I don't know if we are.
Right. Well, the good thing is, Jerry, is that they both like the same type of housing. Seniors that want to downsize and young adults are both looking for the same type of housing units. And that's certainly a discussion we can have with the developer at the next meeting. And, people that have worked on the Littleton Station report, I think that they've identified they've had those discussions, and it's certainly part of the report, the Littleton Station report that was put together.
But
I just-
what I would encourage you guys to do is I would be emphasizing that our firemen, our policemen, our teachers, people who work at Donnellan's can't work in Littleton, who can't live in Littleton, right? That we
Right.
can't, because that's a much more compelling argument, because that's very true. And if you talk to a lot of restaurant owners around, they have a heck of a time getting people to come out and work here because they have to travel 40 miles to get here. And
Right.
it's a burden. So I think that's a much stronger argument.
Okay.
Jerry,
Yeah,
that's why we're doing, that's why we went down the 40-hour to offer different options, different alternatives. We don't have apartments in the town of Littleton. Acton always had them. Littleton does not. The 40-hour is going to allow apartments. We also are going to have condos and smaller units, and they're going to be for sale and for rent. So the hope is that we can start to fill the gap. It's not an answer for the next 10 years, but it's a good start to get us in heading the right direction. And the beauty of the 40R is that if it works there, then we can look at other areas to replicate what we're doing there. But it gives us housing stock that we don't have right now. All we have is
Right.
single family houses. That's
Right.
all we built, single
Right.
families. And now we're going to have duplexes. We're going to have tiny houses, and we're going to have apartments, and they're all going to be 25% of them are going to be affordable, below 80% AMI. And by the way, Cindy, we should have probably told everybody in the audience what AMI meant.
Oh, I know. I thought about that.
You know what? But average mean index. Average mean income. Excuse me.
Right.
So that's what we're shooting for, Jerry, with the 40R. And the nice thing about it is it's been done everywhere else. We're going with a state program so that the Plnbrd has, it's actually the residents in the town of Littleton are going to get the vote because it's going to be an overlay. And if it works at the train station, then maybe it solves some of the problems. And maybe in a couple of years or whatever, we revisit it again. And the people get to vote on it a second time if they want to do the 40R again. But it does offer alternatives to just single family housing at $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. That's not solving the senior problem. It's not solving first-time home buyers, and that's why it's critical that everybody meet in the next 2 weeks to listen to what's going on with the 40-hour train station proposal. And that was a good segue. And is there anyone else with their hands up, Maren?
Yes, one more, and we're going to have to open the
Yeah, I
hearing
know.
before
So we'll
long.
take one or two more.
Can I just, if I may, I just want to reply to Mr. Staples really quick that I'll circle back with him about the programs that are available to help his parents with respect to
That would be great. Thank you.
taxes in Littleton.
Anyone else? Because then we have to move on. We have, we can revisit all of this in 2 weeks when we start talking about the 40R, obviously. Anyone else? Maren,
Yeah, Christine Nordhaus.
Christine, you there? Very quickly,
Hi,
please.
Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. Another important thing that also, about the Littleton Station is it's not just housing, it's mixed use. That really answers, creating commercial development and use development will help with people's property taxes. It's something else that the town desperately needs. And the 40R isn't just awesome for housing. It's awesome for a lot of other reasons too. And I know that this discussion is about affordable housing, but I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So hopefully we'll get a fair turnout in 2 weeks to start discussing the 40R down at the train station, and we can continue this. And thank you again, Cindy. It was sobering and informative. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Maren, why don't we skip board business and everything else and jump to the public hearings since we're running a little late? Does the board have any problem with that?
I'm going to recuse myself from any cannabis. So isn't that the next?
The next two, yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to recuse myself. Okay.
Dave can help with that.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know how long this will go on. So I may or may not be back. We'll just
At
see.
7:40, we have another public hearing for the King Street site.
Okay.
So I'll let you know when we're closing in on that. And if you're available, that'd
Okay.
be great.
Okay. Thanks.
That was great. Thank you, Delisa. Okay, so we have two things going on. So first of all, we have the 7 o'clock continued public hearing, retail marijuana establishment, special permit, water resource, special permit site plan for 531 King Street. We're going to, for Community Care Collaborative. We're going to continue that hearing, and we'll, after this meeting, hopefully we'll either dismiss it or set up another date. But we also we're going to open up a public hearing for retail marijuana establishment, special permit, Aquifer District's special permit, site plan review, 537 Great Road, Community Care Collaborative. So Mr. Giannetta has found an alternative site to the King Street site and is going to be giving us an overview of that potential site at 7:05. Do we have to, Maren, do you have to read the public hearing, right?
Yeah, I'll start with the hearing notice and then I'll finish promoting people. So
Okay.
consolidated public hearing, adult use marijuana establishment, retail special permit, and Aquifer District special permits for 537 Great Road. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a consolidated public hearing on Thursday, March 4th at 7:05 p.m. to consider the application just described above. Property location 537 Great Road, applicant Community Care Collective, property owner 537 Great Road Realty Trust. The applicant is seeking an adult use marijuana establishment, retail, and Aquifer and Water Resource District special permits to allow retail marijuana sales at this site. Describes where you can find copies of the application, describes how to get to this Zoom meeting, and please call Planning Board office 978-540-2425 with any questions.
Okay, and I just want to clarify one thing. Mr. Giannetta has a host community agreement for 531 King Street. He is before the selectmen, and I think there's a couple of selectmen that are select people that are still on that can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the HCA is ready to be signed by the select board for the new location at 537 Great Road. So that we would like to open up the hearing and start with it, even though we know that hasn't quite signed the HCA, but that it's pending. So unless the board has any questions about that, I'd like to open the hearing and at least start getting some information about the new location. Does anyone have any problem that the HCA hasn't actually been signed?
Is there any reason to believe it won't be signed?
And we have Mr. DeCoste on. He can probably enlighten us where we're at with the HCA with Chuck. You want Cindy to do it?
Well, she's the chair of the board. I mean, I can speak to the meeting that happened the other night, but Cindy's still on there and she's the chair.
I appreciate that, Chuck. So I can speak to that. So the select board did meet and we did review the HCA. We had no problems with it as a board. There was some concerns about the new location and if there would be any opposition from abutters to the new location. We instructed Mr. Giannetta to go forward with his public outreach meeting, which he held earlier this week, I understand. And he is scheduled to come back before the select board at our meeting this coming Monday. And we're just going to go forward and sign the HCA at that time based upon representations from Mr. DeCoste about what transpired during that public outreach meeting. We're not seeing that there was any need to make any adjustments or revisions to the HCA as it's currently drafted. So there's no foreseeable reason that we won't be going forward with signing that on Monday night.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clear so that we could, and in fairness, Mr. Giannetta is doing this at the behest of the board because of the issues that we had with the first site. So I want to give him a wide latitude as we get started. I'm assuming Mr. Alpin is going to make the initial presentation and start walking us through the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, my name is Paul Alphin. I'm an attorney at Alphin and Santos in lovely Westford, Massachusetts. I represent Community Care Collective. With me this evening is David Gianetta, the president and CEO, Brian Goudreau of Hancock Associates, attorney Phil Silverman, and Mike Allen, our security consultant. We last met with the planning board on January 7th regarding 531 King Street, and as the chairman said, based upon the feedback that we all received at that meeting, our client felt it was prudent to examine an alternative property, and our client entered into a lease for property at 537 Great Road. 537 Great Road is located in the industrial park located in the northeasterly side of Great Road, in between Beaverbrook Road and Beaverbrook. It is set back from the road, access via a driveway between number 527 and 545, and I believe that there's a site plan floating around that might be shared. We've continued the hearing on 531 King Street generally, and when you get to it, we're going to request that hearing be continued for a month or so. The ultimate goal is that if all permits and approvals are issued for the new site on Great Road, that the application for the King Street site can be withdrawn, but it would be premature to withdraw the King Street application prior to all the approvals for the Great Road site. The Great Road site is located in the IA district. It's also in the adult use marijuana overlay district. The applicant's team, the applicant's business model, the parking calculations, the security standards, the rules and regulations are virtually the same, if not identical, to those which were applicable to the King Street location. So we won't belabor you with some of the minute detail, except to the degree that you need us to answer questions. We refer you and the public to the application package that was submitted and is available on the planning board's website. A complete brand new application was submitted for this site with the necessary information. To the degree that it's necessary, we'd like to enter that application into the record of this hearing so that we don't have to go over every bit of minute detail regarding the application, again, except to the degree that you'd like us to. There are no new exterior construction items proposed. Nothing is going to happen in the exterior of the building. There's no site changes that are proposed. All the work would be done to tenant fit up, would be limited to tenant fit up to the interior of the building. Therefore, there's very little in terms of site plan review, but there are special permit requirements under the bylaw for this particular use. And to start off on your review, the first thing we'll do is we'll have Brian familiarize yourselves with the site.
Thank you, Mr. Alphin. Good evening. For the record, Brian Goudreau with Hancock Associates. So the site before you is 537 Great Road. It's in the industrial district. It's an industrial subdivision. It's a common driveway that shares access between 5 parcels, 4 constructed and one vacant parcel. Generally speaking, from the common driveway at the front of the building, the site slopes down towards the rear, basically at the middle. So the front half of the site goes down towards the driveway. The back half of the site heads towards kind of some wooded area that's off the parking lot. The building is 20,400 square feet, and we've broken it down into essentially 3 tenant spaces. The space that Community Care Collective is going to take up, there's manufacturing space, and then there's office space as well. Utilities on the site are all existing, so public water, private septic, and private drainage. Stormwater is handled basically via sheet flow, meaning that when it rains, water sheets off the pavement into bioretention areas to the north, and there's a series of catch basins at the driveway that convey it into the municipal system to the south. For parking, currently there are 78 spaces. So to break down that 3 kind of tenant use allocations, Community Care Collective has taken up 5,250 square feet. And what that translates to is 35 spaces per zoning. Mr. Giannetta has secured a lease for 43 spaces. So there's an excess of 8 spaces over what's required by zoning. So the balance of the parking is split between an office use and an industrial manufacturing use. So there's 6,000 square feet of office that you can see how it's demarcated and demised on the floor plan that was a part of the application. So that 6,000 square feet of office translates to 24 spaces, leaving about 9,000 and change of manufacturing. Manufacturing is broken down by employee. So using kind of a conservative employee number of 9 for 9,000 square feet translates to 11 parking spaces. So you sum all that up, 70 spaces are required by zoning, 78 are provided, and 43 of those have been secured by Mr. Giannetta for Community Care Collective. Just to touch base real quick on site changes, the only real changes to the site are 2. One, a space is going to be secured for a secured receiving area, and that's basically a fence and a gate to allow a vehicle to go in and unload product. And then at the new entrance and exit at the northwest corner of the building where Community Care Collective is proposed, there's going to be a kind of an area that's being brought into ADA compliance. So we're putting in 2 new doors, an entry and an exit, and then some sidewalk is going to be poured, handicap access, a little bit of restriping in the parking lot to allow for that. But outside of those improvements, everything else is going to remain consistent with what is there today. Lighting is primarily done by wall packs. It will continue to be that way. Stormwater is handled as I described previously. The septic is past Title V, and it's good for the proposed use. So I guess the key point that I really want to make is with the parking number. And the breakdown is such that only 70 spaces are required, 78 are provided, 35 of those are required for Community Care Collective, but 43 have been secured by lease. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Attorney Silverman to kind of dive into the operation and really get into the details of how that is an adequate number for the proposed use.
Great, thank you. Before I get into those operational details, just wanted to introduce myself to the board. I haven't been before you yet. My name is Phil Silverman. I'm from the law office of Vicente Cedarberg. Prior to what I do now, which is cannabis law, I was actually a bankruptcy lawyer for 25 years. And then my father-in-law was a doctor at Mass General, wanted to start a medical marijuana dispensary. So I agreed to help him, learned quite a bit about the business, subsequently was recruited to the law firm of Vicente Cedarberg, where I work now. And this is all we do. We specialize in this across the country. We're a national law firm with offices in multiple states. In our Boston office, we represent about 100 clients across Massachusetts, trying to get these types of businesses open. And our specialty is regulatory compliance, which is really making sure that our clients are in compliance with state laws, local ordinances that govern the industry. And so we meet with the police chief, and we meet with the fire chief, and the planners, and the health departments, and the neighbors, and other stakeholders. And we develop operating procedures that allow each community to implement their vision of how this legalized, regulated cannabis business should operate. And we develop those operating procedures. We help the clients implement them, and we even show up. We do surprise inspections on our clients to make sure that those procedures are being followed at all times. And we've been working with Dave Giannetta now for about 2 years. A lot of the procedures and materials that you've seen in your the special permit application have been developed between us and Dave based upon what we've seen across the country and with a lot of other clients, so that we can give you, each time we work with, sort of the most up-to-date best industry practices in each of these businesses. So to get into how the facility is actually going to operate, probably makes sense to build a little bit on what Brian was just talking about in terms of the traffic and access and parking. Having done this now for like 6 or 7 years across the state, one of the more difficult things is sort of responding to this concern about parking, because I'm sure many of you saw all of the scenes that were playing out on local TV 2 years ago when cannabis first came to Massachusetts, and the town of Leicester and the town of Northampton were inundated with people, curious people wanting to see what was going on with these places. The good news of that is that the landscape has changed significantly in Massachusetts. As I tell people, at that time, there were 2 marijuana dispensaries east of the Mississippi River. Nowadays, in Massachusetts, we have 97 retailers that are opening and are actually open at this point. And there just haven't been similar issues to that as this has happened. The demand is really spread out among a lot more retailers. And I will add to that when this business gets up and going, which is probably 12 to 14 months, as I'll get into now, you're probably going to see about 200 of these retailers across the state. So we fully expect this to be a robust business, but we don't see that this is going to be something that's going to have an enormous impact on your traffic here. And part of that is because this is really an ideal site for this type of a business. We do see these businesses in a lot of communities in industrial parks. It's a very popular way that towns like to do their zoning and encourage these businesses to be there. In this particular instance, you've got a 400-foot drive approximately off of Great Road. So there's no danger of a traffic backup onto Great Road. As Brian mentioned, you've got 43 parking spaces, and I can tell you that is a very significant number compared to most projects that you'll see in the state. Just by way of sort of illustrating what that means, our clients are reporting to us that your average customer transaction these days in Massachusetts takes about 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll be a little bit more conservative than that, and let's just assume for the moment that they take 15 minutes. That means every one of your parking spaces turns over 4 times in an hour. And so when you have 43 spaces, what you're really saying here is there's over 160 parking space opportunities for customers of this type of a business. Well, the reality is that's far more than we would anticipate ever seeing at this business. The company is anticipating about 250 to 300 customers per day. And that happens to line up with the Institute of Traffic Engineers, which would basically be saying your weekday peak hour at a facility like this, probably 25 customers. Your weekend peak might be closer to 28 to 30. So again, let's just say you get your peak, you get 30 customers, but effectively you have about 160 parking spots for those customers based on what you have here, because you can turn them over so quickly. So again, there is an abundance of parking here. Another reason it's a great site. I would also point out we provided a traffic study that I think the key finding there was that that road, Great Road, is seeing about 22,000 vehicles a day. We're talking about 250 to 300 customers. It's a pretty small percentage, and we believe will have a pretty small impact on the general traffic in that area. So just to continue the operational flow, is it possible? Can I do a quick screen share so I can do a floor plan? Is that possible?
Yes, please.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yep. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is a conceptual floor plan of that part of the building. And so you imagine the customer, from the customer experience standpoint, what happens here? Customer drives in, parks in that parking lot that we showed you before. That customer is then going to approach the entry here, okay? What happens here is they immediately have to show ID. Can't even step foot in this building without showing ID to our security personnel outside the building. Assuming that checks out, again, this is 21 years of age or older in order to access this building. They are buzzed in through a door. They walk down a hallway. Before they can get into the sales area, there's a security desk here. They're going to have that ID checked a second time. This is all state regulations, required by state regulation. Assuming, again, correct ID, they're buzzed into the sales area. And at that point, they are going to be meeting a sales associate. And that sales associate, it is possible, and I think, Dave, one of the things that generally these companies try to do is allow for online ordering. So it may well be that that sale has already been ordered online, it's ready for pickup, and the entire transaction is very quick and it's over in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. But let's assume from the moment it's not, the customer will join the sales associate at the counter. They'll have an interaction where they're actually given some educational materials so that they can understand information about cannabis, health effects. We also go over some brief rules about the fact that there is no on-site consumption when they leave the area. They're not allowed to use this product in the area. They should not be using it and then driving. Those types of educational aspects of the interaction. Their products are bagged. They purchase it at the point of sale, and then they exit, as you can see, through the exit area. From the perspective of sort of the facility operation, I'm leaving aside sort of the customer experience. The day begins about an hour before opening. The store opening and closing, for that matter, are conducted by 2 or more employees at all times. All of the product that is sold here is prepackaged by the wholesaler. It's brought to this facility and it goes into the vault, which you can see on the floor plan, and it stays there until the next morning. And it's going to go back in at the end of the day. But it's brought out at the beginning of the day. It's put behind the counters so that the sales agents have easy access when they're trying to fill an order. They can get it, fill the order, and get the customer on their way. Similarly, at the beginning of the day, all of the security systems are checked, make sure they're operational and stores ready to open. At the end of the day, again, we sort of reverse the process. All the product gets returned back to the vault, and all of the necessary doors are locked, the alarms are set, and again, the store is closed by 2 or more people. I'm going to stop the screen share for a minute. Just touch on a couple of other issues that are I think, of significance. Deliveries. Transportation of this product is heavily regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission. Generally occurs in Sprinter vans. They're unmarked vans so that nobody knows what's being transported. You'll usually have a delivery consist of product in 2 or 3 small totes. 2 or 3 people, 2 sale agents in the vehicle at all times under state law. They're monitored by GPS tracking systems, and they're in contact with the receiving site during the entire process. So what really happens here is it's very well coordinated so that the company here will know it's coming. The agents are ready, so when it arrives, they are immediately out. They are picking up the totes. It's about a 2 or 3 minute unloading process to get it back in the door of the facility. And again, the standard types of security precautions you would expect. These deliveries occur at random times. We mix them up over the course of a week times so that nobody can get used to a pattern on this sort of thing. Next topic I want to talk about briefly is waste removal. I did see a letter come through, I think it was from the water department. They had mentioned that this project is within the town's aquifer district, and they were asking for assurances that there was no hazardous waste involved in the process. I can assure you that that is a fact. This really is effectively a convenience store, but it handles marijuana. And so there can be marijuana waste in the sense that somebody may return a product or a product may fall on the floor so that it's contaminated, that sort of thing. When that happens, that product is taken, it is secured in the vault, a separate area of the vault. You have to keep it separated from all other product, and then it is returned to the wholesaler from which it came. So there is no disposal of waste on site. It is just taken back to the wholesaler that it came from. The other waste that might be generated by the project, really, again, like a convenience store, paper goods, boxes, etc., that's disposed of via standard commercial waste disposal company, via a dumpster on the property, and that dumpster remains locked at all times. Next thing, we're going to jump over to security. And the security chief of the company, Mike Allen, is here. So I want to ask him to introduce himself, give you some of the basics there, and then I'll follow up with a few more points about it afterwards.
Can I interrupt you right there? We just so that, because we're running short on time, because we got a security. Mr. Allen gave us a great overview of the other property. You said pretty much everything. This is going to be the same as what's going on there.
Sure.
I'd rather use the time to show us all the new stuff. Not that security is not important. We are going to ask questions about the outside security. The chief has weighed in about the inside security. I just think your time would be better spent if you go over the new nuances of this site in particular, right now.
Okay.
We won't have questions.
Listen, I think then if there are additional security questions, Mike is here. The only other thing I'll add then to the end of the presentation is sort of a timeline here, so you all have a sense. Assuming this is permitted within the next few weeks and that the host agreement comes in, to go through the Cannabis Control Commission's processes, get the construction done, you're probably looking at this opening 12 to 14 months from now. That would be a reasonable timeline. And with that, I guess we'll leave it open to any questions you might have.
Thank you. I'll start with the board. Does the board have any questions or concerns at this time about this particular location and the operation of it? Jeff, do you have any questions?
No, I've been over there. I think it's a great site. I guess my question would be signage, how it's going to be identified. Are there going to be signs on Great Road? How are you going to direct people to the store?
Sure. So one of the interesting things about the industry is that most of the advertising that's done for this is on some of the industry websites, Leafly in particular. So people know where these places are. You don't need to do gigantic advertising signs. Dave Gianetta will correct me. I believe we will have a sign at the corner of the lot itself as you enter. This would be a sign. All it will have is the name of the company. Not allowed to have any images of marijuana or anything of that nature. It's solely so that people know where it is. And it's really, the intent is to be discreet here. And then I think there's also going to be a sign on the building itself. But that's really the only two places you would see signage.
Great. It's just not, I don't think people want to be wandering around the industrial park looking for it. So, and
understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jerry, do you have any questions or concerns at this time?
It's not near a park, is it?
What?
It's not near a park, right?
Nope.
Correct.
Wait, check this time. Good. I have no concerns.
Anna, do you have any questions or concerns?
I do have some questions. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentations tonight. So I wanted to ask, on the site plan, the handicap parking isn't identified, or if it is, I missed it. Can you let me know where that's going to be and make sure it's there?
Brian, you want to touch on that?
Sure. So on the site plan, we didn't indicate the restriping itself, but if you look at the area that says new entrance, new exit, that's going to be the kind of the ADA compatible area. So the parking spaces that are directly adjacent to those new entrances and exits are going to be the handicap spaces.
Okay, could you show me where that is, please?
Lauren, could you put it there? Thank you. So it would be, yeah, right in those spaces right there, directly adjacent to the new entrance.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so then on the plan, I know that there was a change from the Water Resource District to Aquifer, and I think the site plan says Water Resource, so just want to make that quick change on there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I don't believe I have any other questions on the site plan, but I did kind of in general. So, find my notes here. So I know that we talked about the traffic report, which I think is really helpful, especially showing what the town's plans are for the roundabout. But we didn't talk about trip generations for this particular site. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. And again, a little bit of what I'm using is just sort of what we're seeing for similar sites. This is Institute of Traffic Engineers. What they're showing is, in general, the numbers that Dave is using, about 250 to 300 trips a day, is about right. That is generally what we see for a facility like this. And the peak hour, as I said, is somewhere between 25 to 30, depending on whether it's a weekday or a weekend. So that's really the best estimates we have. I wouldn't hold out, and suggest that it's impossible that, for example, on a big holiday weekend, you might see something like 40, at a given time. But again, because you can turn these customers over so quickly, there's more than adequate parking to handle that as well.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of a couple of definitional items. So on page 122 of the application, I had a question about what something means. It says, no individual on the CCC team is a controlling person with over more than 3 licenses in a particular class of license. I just don't know what it means. Can you explain?
I'll explain it to you. The Cannabis Control Commission, they basically wanted to set up rules so that there couldn't be a monopoly controlling all of the dispensaries in Massachusetts. So they wanted to make sure that if there was an individual involved in one of these, that he or she would not be the controlling party with respect to more than 3 of these types of entities, or any particular type of license. So you can have up to 3 retail licenses, you can have up to 3 cultivation licenses, up to 3 product manufacturing, but you cannot have more than that. And I think the point the application is making is that Mr. Giannetta does not control more than 3 of these retail type licenses.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. And speaking, Mr. Giannetta, so I know that there are a couple of letters as part of the application. The one letter in particular on page 155 around the attestation about no smoking being allowed. If Mr. Giannetta could please sign the letter and sign all the letters, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Not a problem.
Thank you. One of the questions in 198C 6 and 7 talks about the quantity of marijuana. And I know that you all provided an explanation about that. But in particular, page 120, you state that the applicant won't be able to provide the planning board the quantity information required until after the license is approved. So it's sort of a chicken and egg. And so I'm hoping you can help us to understand that if the requirements of the bylaw are to have you identify what the quantity is, but you're saying you can't do that till after you get the license, how do you propose we do this?
So I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit about what the town is looking for there, and are you trying to understand how much marijuana is going to be available from this facility over the course of a year?
Yes. So in specifically 6 reads the quantity and source or sources of the marijuana and marijuana products that will be sold. And then the quantity of marijuana and marijuana products that will be cultivated, processed, manufactured, etc., as applicable. So I don't think 7 applies.
Right.
But number 6 points to quantity.
Right.
And you all talked about that on page 120. So I just wanted to know how that's going to work.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you, Mr. Giannetta is associated with a cultivation facility. I'm sure that he's going to use some of that product that's manufactured there for this facility. You also want to have a product mix so that your customers have access to other types of product from a variety. And there's so many different products that are coming out these days. So he'll be purchasing wholesale from other producers as well. to tell you how much, I've never had the question. It's, you know, it's market driven. And obviously to the extent that he's more successful, he's going to be purchasing more. So it's a little, I think it would be fair to say that, you know, over the course of a year, most businesses would sell, you know, over 1,000 pounds of marijuana, for example. But that's, some of that's flour, some of that's in oils and vaporizers and edibles. So it's a little hard to answer your question, both because there's different types of marijuana products that impact the quantity. And also, again, you know, until we see how many other places are open nearby and in Littleton itself, it's hard to tell you how much we're going to be inventorying.
If I may, real quick about that question too, I think from a security standpoint, it's not a great idea to announce to the public what quantity of product we intend on having at the location. It's kind of sharing, you know, it's no different than you know, telling the public what Bank of America keeps in their vault. You know, it's just not a great idea to.
It's you're constantly replenishing. You know, you usually have about 2 deliveries a week. You know, so that your vault on site, you know, is filled and has enough. But you want to be, you know, you don't want to have too many deliveries.
Yeah. So, thank you. So here's where I'm going with this. The marijuana bylaw asks for that amount, and I perfectly understand the security nature of it. I understand that Chief Plnbrd still has to do his final security review with you all. If you could please identify what that quantity is to him and
Yes.
put that in whatever documentation that he's going to be reviewing. But I will want to make sure that that's covered off with him so that as a town, we have received all the required information.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I believe I may have asked this question before, so I apologize. In several places in your application, you identify volunteers in your policies and procedures. Can you tell us more about the volunteers?
Yes, I can. So when back at the beginning of the discussions with the select board, I think that's around the time that we had discussed this too. You know, the concept of who I am and my approach to all of this and why I'm even involved here as one of the reasons was because I'm from here. And, you know, I know that there's some limiting factors here in Littleton. You know, there's community outreach that could be done through community service hours. And when I use the term volunteer, it's more so the act of giving back to the community. And the way that we would do so is by me having an interest in hiring local residents of Littleton as much as I possibly can to form a group of employees who will be more so incentivized to actually perform those types of duties. This would be something like cleaning up a park or, you know, helping out at you know, the senior center if needed. And these would be paid employees that would be, you know, working for Community Care Collective, and they would be paid for that time through our business. So from time to time, we would generate a group of employees who would offer up the time to actually perform these types of community service outreach type events.
Okay. If that's the case, I totally understand where you're going with it, but I would say that the term volunteer, I think it's just maybe misrepresented there, because if they're paid employees, they're employees. So why do you need the term in volunteers in there? It might just confuse things. So
that's very fair. I guess my only response to that is I would hope that there's some appreciation for a 267-page application, and you know, from time to time we have a word or two that it gets a little mixed up. The intention
Okay.
was, yeah, no, but I understand your concern and.
Yeah. Well, and again, anybody who looks at this says, oh, well, they're going to be bringing in volunteers. What do they get as volunteers? Do they maybe get some pot on the side? You know, that kind of thing. So
No.
I want to volunteer.
No,
So
no, that's
I'm just
not the case.
using it as an example. But
Yeah, understood.
Anna,
Okay.
do you have any more questions? We're running a little tight on time. I'd like to open it up to the.
Well, please do open up the other one. I have just a couple of other ones, and this is probably going to get continued, so I can wait.
Thank you. Maren, does anyone have their hands up? Maren, you're mute. Can you unmute yourself, Maren? No, you can't.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I had a great response.
Oh.
Nobody has their hand raised right at the moment for public comment, but I'll keep watching.
Okay.
If we want to open and suspend the 550, 534 King Street application until maybe, 10, 15 more minutes?
I'd like to continue this for a little longer. Can we open and continue that, and then we'll take a little more time with it, and then finish with them?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to recommend. I'll read the public hearing notice, and you can continue for a short time.
That would be great, thanks. Because
yeah.
the other one's been continued anyway, right? So we can take their space.
The
Yep.
30 Taylor Street will be continued, and we'll have to come up with a time for the other site for Community Care Collaborative.
Okay.
Public hearing, Water Resource District Special Permit, 550 King Street. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 4th at 7:40 p.m. to consider the application for a special permit for Aquifer and Water Resource District, property location 550 King Street. The application is for Aquifer and Water Resource District special permit to allow a change of property lines for an existing use within the Aquifer District. Application is available on the town website, and the website information is provided. And the notice tells you how to get in, find the information for this meeting, and please call the Planning Board office 978-540-2425 with any questions.
Thank you. So we'll continue that till, when do we say, 8:10, something like that? Does that work?
Thank you.
That works. Okay, so we can continue this. Anna, did you have any other questions or?
Yes, so I did. Thank you. So I know that Mr. Silverman explained that there has been, I believe, explained that there is another application for this particular site to the Cannabis Commission. Can you please just let us know what the status of that is?
Sure. So the way it works, the prior site was what's called provisionally licensed through the Cannabis Control Commission. And what we'll do here is once we get the host community agreement signed, we take that and we submit that to the Cannabis Control Commission with what's called a change of location application. And basically they'll look at it, they'll probably contact the town, they'll want to make sure that this site is appropriately zoned. And then once they do, they will just allow the provisional license to be transferred over to this new location. So hopefully we're pretty close to that with the Board of Selectmen and making that happen. And hopefully it's about a 30 to 45 day process to get the change of location approved by the Cannabis Control Commission.
Right. So thank you. Once that happens, once you get the HCA and take a look at the application again, and please resubmit any of the information, because I know that in the 267 pages, there was a lot from the other site, which, as you know, is not acceptable. So we need to make sure that this one is buttoned down with all of the accurate information. So that would be really
We'll
helpful.
do an update with everything new, including the change of control. We're happy to do that.
And let's see.
Anything else?
Um, I'm just going through some notes.
Okay, well, I'll pipe in for a minute then while you. It was good to see your traffic study, 22,000 trips a day on 119, and you're looking to add 300. So I know there's been a lot of people talk about concern about the traffic. In the grand scheme of things, there is a lot of retail establishments already on this road. The fact that you're going to add 300, I don't see that as a major issue. I do want to make sure, and I'm relying on what we heard in the safety about making sure the outside of the building is policed, that people don't use the material that they buy there and don't break it up and give it to minors or whatever, that they get it, they get in the car and they go away. So we're going to rely on Chief Plnbrd for the inside security, but we're going to be very cognizant of what's going on the outside, be it lighting, be it security, make sure that nobody lingers or loiters there. That's my biggest concern. I'm not so much worried about safety on the inside, it's more safety on the outside. I do think it's a better location being in the industrial park. Yeah, as you drive around, as you said, Mr. Silverman, you're starting to see these all over the place in industrial parks. So I think it fits in nicely there. A little signage to make sure people don't get lost would be nice, but like once they find it once, I'm sure they'll find it again.
Correct.
Other than that, we'll leave it up to David and the chief to make sure the internal flow and internal is safe. And as per Anna's, give them a rough idea what you and him know is going to be in that safe in that vault at any one time. I think those are my biggest concern of the whole thing is the outside safety, making sure that people coming and going are safe and people don't loiter and they buy their product and they head home and use it recreationally at home.
Yeah, just to provide some reassurance, this isn't just a local matter. Obviously, your local police department has a role in that, but the Cannabis Control Commission and the regulations require us to do that. We have to make sure that people are not using on site, and through the cameras and our personnel, we'll be doing that.
That's the biggest thing, yes. Anyway, anything else, Anna, or can we pick a date to continue this? Probably sometime in, I don't know when. Are you good?
Yeah, I don't have any more questions at this time.
David, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. If there are no further questions, we would definitely like to seek a decision here. I understand it's not going to happen this evening, but I'd like to hopefully get to that point that, we get there. So
yeah, we'll start working on it. We'll start talking to town council about it and things like that.
Great.
Maren, when can we put them back on? Maren, you're muted again. You're muted.
I think I know by now.
First rodeo.
Hearing date in April is April 8th.
Is there a meeting in March?
That's the public hearings for the zoning bylaw amendments.
We're kind of full on the 18th. I hate to say it. Are you going to be offering anything new, or can we wait till April and try to button everything up by then? Can we do that?
Nothing new. We'll comb through the application. We will send any pertinent information to Chief Plnbrd with regards to the supply discussion, and we can do a resubmission of the same application, just revising some of these key terms that we've discussed this evening.
And Mr. Alphen, if you want to work on making sure the host community is taken care of, and we're well on our way with the cannabis control for the change of location and want to start working on an approval, you're more than welcome to start that, and we'll send it off to town council. So if you want to use that 3 or 4 weeks for that, I see Anna raising her hand, probably is not thrilled with that, what I just said, but it's your dime. If you want to start working on it and send it to town council, then, Mara knows how to get it to him, but Anna's going to say that she thinks that it might be a little premature.
I just wanted to add one thing that I see in my notes. So based on 198C10, we do need updates from the Secretary of State on the annual report and the amendment that was filed. So that needs to be part of the application too. Thank you.
Okay. Will that give you guys enough to get it done by the first week of April?
Sure.
I would say so.
All right. That'd be great. So, Marin, when do you want to put them on in April?
Do you want to do this right near the beginning, 6:30 or 7?
I think so. Yeah, let's get it on early. We can give us a little bit of time to go through everything. Hopefully we'll be further along with the state. So, great. Is that good for you, gentlemen?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Ladies?
Thank you.
You also need to formally extend the hearing for the King Street
Well,
property.
yes. You read my mind. I was just going to get to that. We're going to extend that one till April, what did I say was the 4th?
April 8th.
April 8th, excuse me. We'll put that one on at 7 o'clock. Yes, Anna.
Is there anyone from the public with any comments?
We asked earlier and there was nobody, so.
No, nobody with a hand raised.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll continue that one as well.
So who made the motion to continue? Sorry.
I'll make a
Jerry, you're
motion
gonna
to continue.
Both meetings.
Both
Till-
meetings, well, no, both public hearings until April, what?
April 8th.
April 8th.
7 o'clock and 7:05.
7 o'clock. Does that work for everyone? Anyone want to second that? So moved. I think Jeff did that. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Jerry?
Aye.
Anna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Aye.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. And I'm an aye. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so we're back to our 8 o'clock.
Okay. Just a moment.
Excuse me, we're back to our 7:40. Public hearing, Aquifer Water Resource Special Permit, 550 King Street, the old Tuttle House. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's the old Tuttle House.
Okay, so Kate Enright and Madison Blanchard, is there anybody else you expect to have present?
Not tonight.
Thank you.
Sorry we're a little tardy, but why don't you give us a quick Reader's Digest version of what you want to do?
Sure, no, absolutely. Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson. I'm here tonight with Madison Blanchard. If I could share the screen. You've already got me set to share. That's good. Essentially what the owners of 534 and 550 King Street are looking to do is to be able to create an A&R to cut the Tuttle House off of the larger lot. So the larger lot being just over 41 acres with the commercial office space. The Tuttle House has not been used for some time, and they'd like the ability for that building to be used, and they're looking to subdivide that. In doing so, and looking at the zoning for the main part of the lot, it appears that there's a special permit issued in, I believe, 2007 for the impervious surface on that lot. So the impervious surface on that lot was 48.83% at that time. In cutting the Tuttle House lot out, which is approximately 1.5 acres, essentially the denominator of that equation then reduces in size, meaning the total land area that we're dividing the impervious surface by. So our impervious surface on the larger lot, which remains to be about 39.75 acres after, goes from 48.83% to 49.99%. So it's a little over 1% change. but because this board issued a special permit previously, and we're now both in the Water Protection District and the Aquifer Protection District, we need to seek relief from this board to allow that change before we can come back to you with an A&R plan. That's it, in a nutshell.
Right, so I think what we did, and Myron, you can correct me because you and I are the only ones that were around for this. We actually, I think your impervious is even lower because we gave you pervious pavers. That's the first property in the town of Littleton where the planning board allowed pervious pavers out there. Your driveway is all filled with pervious pavers. So I think we did it as impervious, but it's actually pervious. So I don't think there's going to be an issue at all as far as the small lot and the big lot. I don't see any problem with that one at all. The reason we did it so that it could stand alone in the event it was ever broken out. When the original owners came in back in 2007, the thought was always to break the Tuttle House out to allow it to be either a bank or some sort of retail establishment, because when it was first designed, it was the house that went with the land, and it was thought to have it restored, which they did a great job restoring it. It used to be a boardroom for IBM when it was over there. It stopped being that probably 15 years, 20 years ago. Now it's just sitting there all restored and nobody's in it. So I think we did it back then so that it could be broken up separately with, we can obviously give you a waiver for that, but I think we did it so that it would stand alone on its own in the first place. Maren, is that your recollection, or am I mute?
Yeah, I do recall the pervious pavers at the next to the Tuttle House. Now that you mentioned it, you're right.
Yeah, I think this was the first one we did because it was so close and we did it. We wanted to see how it worked and everything else like that. So there were cobblestones that are pervious. And I mean, obviously, I have no problem with granting the waiver from the 30% or 34, whatever it is, so that it can be broken off and can be finally utilized as some sort of retail component. How's the rest of the board feel about it?
Well, it doesn't change. You're not changing anything. You're just talking about carving off the otherwise pervious areas that are on the Tuttle site, and that just leaves you with a deficit on the main site. I mean, if worse comes to worse, and you could just peel up some parking lot.
Which they've already filled in the town of the parking lot.
There's nothing in the bylaw that talks about like equivalent exchange or something? They're not doing anything other than subdividing a lot. Like, they're not making more impervious space. They're just subdividing a lot. So it just changes the ratio. There's nothing about the bylaw that says they're not otherwise.
No, they have to.
I don't know what the right language is. They're not otherwise impairing any property as far as recharge goes. I mean, there's no hydraulic change to the property.
Not really.
So what do they just need a waiver based on that?
I'm sure Katie already has it done and drawn up. What do you need from us?
I believe what we need, and Maren, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need the special permit essentially modified to allow for the increase in impervious surface on the larger lot.
I know, but can't we just add a note to just say that the intent was that you really aren't increasing the surface?
Well, I think what can happen is certainly once we break out, and there are pavers on the Tuttle lot can stand alone by itself the way we've drawn it here.
The Tuttle can, yeah.
Meet all the requirements of the bylaw. The thing is, we could then go back and increase the impervious on the Tuttle to meet that requirement if we wanted to at a later date, is what I'm saying. Is if you look kind of long term, and the main lot or the larger lot, so we could increase impervious surface to the Tuttle based upon the percentage impervious. If we needed to later, we could request that because it'll stand alone on its own.
On its own, but right. But the commercial side, the IBM building does not.
Correct.
But
correct.
Didn't you gain relief years ago when you filled in all the parking lots that used to be in the front and made them all grass again? Where does
So we checked that. So we checked that. We had the surveyor actually check that, and we calculated the impervious coverage based upon actual existing conditions, and that's where the 48.83% impervious cover comes from.
Okay, so
How
what
about
we,
this? Could we do language in the special permit that says, because you created a deficit with the split, that you may not increase the impervious on the total property unless you do some kind of equivalent exchange with the IBM site?
So I have a question about that real quick. So as we're talking about the impervious and whether to increase it or decrease it, I had a question about the pear orchard right next door and to understand what was the original intention. Was that to be a match set with the house, or was it completely separate? I mean, I had the impression from when we discussed this last May that the pear orchard sort of went with the house. And so I wanted to talk about that real quick before we talk about the impervious component of it. What do you all remember about that?
well, this was even before Myron and our time. It was already built when we got here. I believe our understanding is that the house was restored as part of the overall process, and the pear orchard was left in its natural state obviously the pear orchard used to be a lot bigger. There was a representation of the pear orchard just so that it would still be there. The house stayed with IBM forever and was, like I said, boardrooms and everything. Now it's been totally restored, and there's got to be some other use for it other than just to sit there empty. Obviously, the IBM, they don't need it for what it was. So I would.
No, but that's not the question.
Well, the question is, I don't think there was any special permit reason why the pear orchard stayed there, as it was more symbolic of what was there before than anything else.
But is the pear orchard is drawn out of the current subdivision, the current subdivide, right?
That is correct.
And that is part of why I wanted to ask about it, was because if it was sort of historically supposed to be together, then shouldn't we try to continue that and understand the reasoning for it? So
I don't think so. I don't think that's our purview.
The historic connection was broken when the house was moved. This was not the original site of the house. And as Mark said it well, it's a representation of what was at one time the oldest pear orchard in Massachusetts. Now, there might be one or two real pear trees, but most of them are Bradford pear trees. So it's really sort of a symbol. It's not affected by the A&R. But I have yet another question about the A&R, which is most of that site is taken up with drainage structures. How is that going to be represented on the subdivision? Because these drainage structures are for the use of the larger parcel.
There's actually, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
There's actually going to be quite a few cross easements out here after this.
Okay, that's my question. Okay, fine.
Yep.
I'm still going back to there is no way that you have more impervious now than you did before those parking lots were taken out. I think that's where we hang our hat, because if you guys remember, the whole front of that building was all parking spaces. There used to be the Chinese restaurants there. There were parking spaces, parking lot, pavement on the whole front. They grassed it all over, so their impervious has to be a lot lower now than it was in 2007 when those buildings were there and the front yard was all pavement. So
yeah, but you're taking that out of the calculation for the IBM property that's left.
I can't believe the IBM property is so high now when they should have gotten a bonus for taking it back out of asphalt and putting it into pavement. So I can't believe it's as high as it is. What was it 10 years ago?
Can you put up Google Maps and pull up the site? I'd like to see exactly what you're talking about, Mike.
All right,
I think Maren has it.
I'm looking at it right now, just so you know.
Well, I have it up already.
Okay.
So there was a parking lot removed from here.
Right there.
Yeah.
So are you accounting for that in your impervious calc?
I am not.
So then could have made this a lot easier if you had just calculated that.
That's not what I'm getting at. You went from all of that being pavement. So you're turning that into green space, and you're talking about a percentage point over here where the house is. So
I know, but you owe us that calculation.
So-
Why should we guess?
So
No, they do have the calculation. They actually surveyed it, and the existing conditions are such that that's what they're presenting.
You know, but she said,
Regardless of what the feeling is about it, they had someone actually measure it.
So
I actually wonder if the parking spaces are still or are still not counted, if that makes sense, because I couldn't come up with the numbers. In 2007, there were 1,979 parking spaces, but now we only have 1,800. So what happened to that other 179 spaces? Are those the ones that used to be on that now grassy area?
Yes, that's those.
Okay, got it.
And so the permit called for 49.5% impervious.
Mm-hmm.
This was the zoning chart that was on that plan that was approved, was 49.5% impervious. When we calculated it based on the survey, we're at 48.83% impervious. So we're less than this, but when we take out the Tuttle House, it puts us more than this, and we end up.
Right. That's all right. So it's still equivalent exchange, even with the removal of that parking lot. Right? I mean, if you take, you paved over one parking lot, now you're flipping out the Tuttle House. The land that goes along with the Tuttle House has a higher percentage of pervious than impervious. And so it throws off the ratio in the lot from which you're splitting. And so you're asking for relief. So it goes back to my original question. Should we be saying that? Because from a physical standpoint, you have a fixed amount of pervious versus impervious, whether you split it off or not, right? The two lots together, you're not changing the hydrology. There's no site work being done. When you carve off the Tuttle House, if whoever buys that A&R should not be allowed to increase the impervious unless you bring the IBM site in compliance, is what I'm saying that it should read.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, what we'd have to do, any increase in impervious on either of these sites, because of the district that we're in, would require us to come back before this board. So if somebody were to purchase the Tuttle House and want to increase impervious surface, they would have to come to this board and prove that they meet the special permit criteria, which would include, adding additional infiltration and upgrading the stormwater management to do so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think that preserves. I mean, the boards turn over every so often. You guys come back in 10 years, nobody may remember that right now the IBM site is not meeting the ratio. Because you're only going to look at this A&R as is if somebody comes back in front of us. You're not going to go back and say, well, it was tied to the IBM site, and therefore now you're even more impervious.
But the ratio is only to require you to meet the special permit criteria, which requires you to create infiltration and stormwater management.
Right, but I'm saying this: the intent of the ratio is to ensure that we have enough pervious space to provide for recharge. And what I'm saying is, if that's the intent of having a calculation, you haven't really changed anything. It's just math on paper, but in aggregate, you change nothing.
Right. The intent is to require recharge, and so every bit of pervious surface that's changed impervious, you have to create recharge to make up for that. So it's all about recharge.
So in other words, net, the impervious, technically speaking, would never change. So there's no possibility to negatively impact the recharge on either of these properties through the special permitting process. So there's no harm, no foul.
If you meet the special permit criteria, that's correct.
So we would never be impacting our hydrology, so it should be no problem.
So just come in with an A&R for that property and make a note on the plan that the impervious is going to go on the second property, the IBM site, that it's going to go up slightly, and we'll leave it at that because it's our discretion what it is anyway. It's supposed to be anything over 30 is a special permit by us anyway. So we'll leave the Tuttle House as it is and put a note on the plans that you're still well within and the recharge is fine. And that way, 10 years down the road, when Jerry gets back on the board, he can say yes or no. How's that? Will that work?
No, she just answered that question. She just said it doesn't matter. There's no chance of the ratio ever getting
I totally agree. That's why I just want to move it along. Let's.
So I,
Okay.
It's fine, go.
I have a couple of quick questions. So in terms of the house, Ms. Enright, do you have any sense as to what might happen with this particular home? Was it just going to get put on the market? I mean, any thoughts at all?
They're still contemplating that, but yes, I mean, the intention of the A&R would be for the Tuttle house on its own lot to be put on the market at some point.
Okay, all right. And then at one point in the letter that you wrote, you said something about there being a concern about the front setback. So can you talk about that real quick?
Yes, so the building, based on the new Village Common form-based code, is too close to the road in its in its existing condition.
Okay, all right, got it. That's what I thought it was. Okay. All right.
Obviously grandfathered, and you're not doing any, if you do decide to do something to the building, then you'd have to address it then, but as it sits right now, you predate zoning by a long shot.
1720, I heard.
Yeah. So anyway, do you want to work this out, send it over to us? We'll have town council check on it and make sure everything's good, and you can A&R and whenever you feel like it. Will that work?
Yeah, absolutely. We're ready to go when you guys are.
Okay. Anna has one last question.
Yes, I didn't notice that the plan was stamped. So when you finally submit the final one, please make sure about that.
Absolutely.
And then, do we have any comments from anyone in the public? We can't hear you.
I moved. Nobody has their hands raised at the moment.
Okay, so why don't you get us, we'll just run it by town council real fast, not that I think we need to, but, and we'll go from there. You can,
Yep. So do you want to continue this until the April 8th meeting? I believe Katie had the A&R to come in for that evening, and then you could vote on this and have the A&R ready to go. Does that work?
does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Do you want to shoot for 6:45? Can we do it in 15 minutes?
Don't we have the marijuana thing at 6:30?
At 7.
All right, let's do 6:45. We'll be in and out. Yes.
And the cross easements, as you referred to, will be on the A&R.
It will not be on the A&R. They're going to be on a separate easement drawing because they're actually much more complicated than just the drain.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
We also have wastewater and other utilities that cross over.
Well, because we want to protect the interest of, stormwater management for the IBM sites. So are we going to see them at all, or?
We haven't created that separate easement plan yet.
Okay.
We could certainly provide that to you once it's complete.
Well, I sort of am inclined to condition my approval of the A&R with understanding what's going to happen to all that drainage.
I would agree.
Yeah, we can work on it with the surveyor then in the next couple of weeks and see if we can come up with a clean plan.
Okay.
Great.
So put you on the 18th for 6:45. How's that?
April 8th.
April 8th.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Night.
So somebody made the motion to continue to April 8th?
I'll make the motion continue until April 8th.
Second.
All those in favor, Jerry?
Aye.
Anna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Where's Delisa, by the way? Did she?
She'll be back in a moment. So 6:45 on April 8th.
Yeah. Okay, so we have an 8:05 stormwater bylaw update, general bylaw.
Actually, yeah, let's see. Next meeting, March 18th, Rebecca Lacey will have a very short presentation for you on a modified stormwater bylaw. So she'll have all that ready to go.
Okay, great.
Who's going to take that to town meeting then? Would it be planning board or light and water since it's stormwater?
It's a general bylaw. Planning board is a special permit granting authority under that. I believe select board will be ready to present at town meeting. They're going to be discussing it, I believe, Monday night. And so.
Okay.
Right, you don't need a hearing, but I would recommend hearing the information from town council.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's get back to board business real fast so that we can wrap this meeting up. Any board member updates?
Yeah, real quick. So MPIC met and we are working on planning to present a status of the progress of the implementation of the master plan. That will be a presentation somehow at Springtown meeting.
Great. Anybody else? No, we have nothing. Affordable housing, no. Jeff, no. Okay. How about public input? Anybody got their hand raised at this late hour?
Nobody with their hand raised.
All right. And what about minutes?
Minutes, my apologies. I gave you too many minutes. January 21 and 28, they're already approved and posted. The only new minutes were February 4.
I knew that. Anybody have any question with the minutes? Or can we ask to be approved as written?
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Jerry?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jeff, what about you? So that
Yes.
did me next. And Anna?
Yes.
Okay, so now we have Bennett Orchard final bond release.
Yep, developer Peter DeCarolis requested release of the final bond amount. It's $88,000 plus interest. The roadway's been accepted, so I recommend you vote to release the bond.
Yeah, I agree.
How much is it? I'm sorry.
88,000.
Okay.
Plus interest. All right, so
I know.
someone want to make a motion to release the Bennett Orchard bond, final bond release?
I'll make a motion to release the Bennett Orchard final bond
Anyone?
release.
Second? Jeff?
Yes. Second.
I said, all those in favor, Anna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, last but not Crop Circle, set bond amount.
They will be providing updated bond estimate in time for the next meeting.
Okay,
Nothing
Just
tonight.
one note about Crop Circle. I noticed it in the marketed now, and they're marketing those homes in the 900s.
that's the one off of Vilken, off
Foster.
of Foster Street.
Yeah.
900?
Yes.
Jesus.
Which caught my eye because I didn't know. I knew nothing about it, and I saw it in the Boston Sunday Globe because I looked for my projects in it, and so I went online and that's what they're marketing at.
These
Kind of
residents.
the antithesis of what we heard earlier today, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. It's a bookend to the first conversation. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, when everybody goes back to the city, then we'll be fine.
Then will be cheaper, yeah, okay, sure. All right, so we're
Right.
good.
This is nuts.
What?
Yeah, housing prices are ridiculous.
Tell me about it, yeah. That's why,
It's like the opposite of 2007.
all right, well, let's see what, hopefully you'll all be ready and available, all hands on deck for March 18th with the, we'll have a public notice, so everyone will be coming out of the woodwork for that one.
Yep.
So,
Is there any outreach plan in advance of that meeting?
I don't, no, we'll get a handful for that meeting. It's been posted, I mean, it's in the papers and stuff, but,
Where the 40 are.
yeah, the 40 are. So,
Put your Kevlar on.
Yep, updated the website and hopefully everybody can, including today, updating the map. That wasn't printing out or showing up before. So.
Do you think it would be helpful to add a link to Cindy's presentation onto the 40R site?
Sure.
yeah, that actually would be really good. Yeah, that would be good. Not that everyone's gonna look at it, but anyway. Anyway, okay, so we're on. So Mara and I have a meeting on Tuesday with Joe Layden. Anthony going to be there too,
I believe so.
and Robert Long and his team about potential funding sources from the state and stuff. They're going to give us an update as to where they're at with that. So we'll keep you appraised of that if anything comes out of it. Okay. We're good. Thank you all for this evening and stay safe. Hope everyone. What?
Go get your shot.
Yeah, I'm getting my shot on Sunday morning.
I can't get a shot. I'm not gonna get a shot till like August.
You probably won't get one by that time. They won't.
I can't even. The VA. I could have got one from the Army, but the VA's so pounded with phone calls, their phone number doesn't even work. It says
none of it works. You should try to go online and try to get a shot. It's hit or
I have
miss.
to drive up to the Bedford site and pound on the door.
It's
It's overwhelmed.
It's hit or miss. All of it's hit or miss, you know. So anyway, but then
I'm just gonna wait till they have one at the high school.
Thank you.
You're August, I'm probably September then.
I'll let you know how it went.
I'll be
Anyway,
getting the booster before I even get the first one.
probably, yeah. I think they set the boosters up right away once you get the first one. So
Yeah,
I'll let you know how it went.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Great job, Mark.